Rotarians, today it's my absolute privilege and honor to introduce to you the 56th governor of our state, Governor John Bel Edwards. Born and raised in Amite, he was instilled and raised with values of small town community and service above self. One of 8 children, 6 brothers, 1 sister. His father was the sheriff of Tangipahoa Parish, and his mother, when she wasn't busy running a 10-person household, was a very devout and active member of the local Catholic Church. Valedictorian of Amite High School while playing both baseball and football. He earned a commission to the United States Military Academy, where he was on the Dean's List, and served as a student representative to West Point's famous Honor Code enforcement. He served 8 years in the Army of our country, after which he returned to civilian service, so to speak, enrolling in LSU Law School, where he graduated Order of the Coif, which is top 10% of the class, in 1999. But of all his many impressive accomplishments, perhaps his most impressive is the fact that he won the heart of his high school sweetheart, Donna, who's not here with us today, and they've shared a very happy and loving marriage and raised 3 wonderful children. If you ever had the chance to interact with Governor Edwards personally, you know he's the real deal. What you see is what you get. He's a down-to-earth politician, a somewhat contradiction in terms. And as a testament to his down-to-earthness, the first time, if you ever visit the governor's mansion, you see a living testimony to it. You see his chicken coop, full of lively chickens and many colored eggs. It just goes to show you can take the country out of the boy, but you can't take the boy out of the country. He's very proud of his chicken coop, as he should be. And even though rumor has it that the Attorney General and a certain sitting U.S. Senator is conducting an investigation as to the funds used to build the chicken coop, I'm very happy to report, my fellow Rotarians, that no taxpayer funds were used to build the chicken coop in any way. All joking aside, we are very, very fortunate as Louisianians to have a man of such integrity at the helm of our state. I personally know of few, if any, individuals who personify the 4-way test or the honor code at West Point more than our governor, ladies and gentlemen, Governor John Bel Edwards.
Thank you. Thank you, Jay. What a kind introduction. I'm going to take you on the road with me. I think it's highly appropriate that this Army veteran, this airborne ranger, give a book to some school children about battleships, by the way. I do want to acknowledge the mayor. Thank you very much for being here and for everything that you're doing, and for everybody who's here, for all the contributions you make to this community, to our state. Thank you, and thank you for being involved in Rotary. Now, you're looking at a Kiwanian, but I want to thank you for what you do as Rotarians, and I know that it's important, and I know that you all believe in this 4-way test, so thank you very much for that. And I do want to thank Jay for saying some nice things about Donna. This weekend will be 29 years. And I told her we're in session and probably won't go anywhere or do anything, and she's not real happy about that. No, I'm going to try to get her a hot dog or something. I do want to encourage you all to come back next week to hear Ann Levy speak. I don't know her, I've never met her, but I was in Washington, D.C. a while back, and I had a few hours before the plane left, and I didn't have any more scheduled meetings, and I went to the Holocaust Museum. And when you go there, there's a table set up of survivors that you can meet with and ask any questions. Nothing's off limits, and we had these 2 perfectly young, spry-looking, 90-year-old gentleman who answered every question that I had and that others had, and probably one of the best experiences I have ever had just trying to get my mind around what that was all about and how inhumane it was, the scale of it, just how every single aspect of their lives had been impacted by it. So it's a whole lot easier to get here next Wednesday than to get to Washington. So come next Wednesday, but the next time you're in Washington, take advantage of that museum, because even if for some reason the survivors aren't there, go through that museum and take some time in that room with all the shoes, and that's all I'm going to say about it right now. And I think you will be as impacted as I was. I want to thank Perry for praying for us today and for specifically talking about the least among us from Matthew 25. Because of all the people that we hear from when you try to run state government, and I know this because they come visit me, they did when I was a legislator, most of those people that we prayed for don't have paid lobbyists who come to that Capitol advocating on their behalf. And so it's incumbent upon those of us to do that for them. And to not only think about them when someone has a thoughtful prayer like you had today, or that one time a year that happens to be the gospel reading, we need to do that every day. And I will tell you that I chose that as my gospel reading in my inaugural Mass because I try very hard to make sure we don't forget about the least among us. Because they are tremendously impacted by what we do and what we don't do, and yet they're the ones we hear from the least, unless we choose to go out and interact with them, because they don't have the wherewithal to interact with us or to hire people to do that on their behalf. So thank you very much for that prayer and for that reminder today. And I want to thank all of you for the opportunity to be here. It's a pleasure to be with you. I want to stand before you today and look, nobody is more mindful than I am of the challenges we have in the state of Louisiana. But I will tell you at the same time, nobody is more optimistic than I am about the state of Louisiana. I'm going to tell you we have tremendous momentum right now, and that the future is as bright as you can imagine. But we do have some work to do. We have to come together and fix some very basic problems. And when we do, we are going to see ourselves enter an era of prosperity like we haven't seen in a long time. But we've got to get the work done. Because if we don't, we threaten that momentum. We threaten that future growth. And so I'm about to start talking about some specific things. But if you only remember that part of my speech today, know that you are looking at somebody who is extremely optimistic about our state. And I am going to work very, very hard at making sure that that optimism is well-founded. And I want you to share that optimism, but also want you to share my resolve that together, as Louisianans, not as Republicans and Democrats or independents, not as Rotarians and Kiwanians, but that together we can solve these problems, that we have to solve these problems, and we'll get that done, and we're all going to be the better for it. Because the most important thing we have to do while we're here on this earth is make sure that those children, like the ones at Greenbrier who are going to read about battleships, have a better future, that they have a better world to live in than we did. That is our mission. That was the mission of the generation that came before us as well. And so I'm excited about what we can do to make that a reality for them. Now, it actually seems just about like every day now that more businesses are choosing to make Louisiana their home. Since January of 2016, Louisiana's attracted 83 major economic development projects, representing $25.6 billion in capital investment. Those economic development wins are attracting 20,000 new direct and indirect jobs and retaining more than 13,000 existing jobs in our state. Just today, my administration announced a new $115 million state-of-the-art lumber mill investment in central Louisiana. Just last year alone, we attracted 43 new projects. One of them was DXC Technologies, which will call New Orleans home. 2,000 direct permanent jobs at that one site, the biggest economic development win in our state's history. The second biggest economic development win anywhere in the country last year. And New Orleans won over 30 other cities all around the country. That's what we can do. That's what we can continue to do in Louisiana. And I am most excited because half of the upfront incentive money to support this deal, to land this deal, is money that's going to go from economic development to higher education to educate and train their employees, Dr. Rollo. That's a pretty good win, isn't it? That's what we need to be doing. And I will tell you, as a governor who met with DXC as they were trying to make their final decision, had I not fully committed the state of Louisiana to stabilizing higher education, so that we didn't continue on that road of cutting them more than any other state in the nation over the previous 8 years, we would not have gotten that job, that economic development win, I should say. It's critically important because nobody wants to invest in Louisiana if they're not going to have the educated and skilled and trained employees they need to be successful. And when we demonstrated our commitment by last year, for the first time in 9 years, funding higher education without a cut and fully funding the TOPS program, they saw what they needed to see. They made the announcement they are coming to Louisiana. We jeopardize that going forward if we can't find the resolve to fix our budget. And by the way, I didn't say we invested more money in higher education. We just simply did not cut them for the first time in a decade. It was pretty nice, wasn't it, Mr. Lipsy?
Yes, it was.
But think about how low we've set the bar. We just stabilized higher education. We didn't plus them up, and we were able to allow leaders like Mr. Lipsy, like Mr. Chabert here on the Board of Regents, working with Joe Rollo. And there's probably more higher education people in this room, and I just don't see you right now. But we allowed them to stabilize, catch their breath, and start delivering better education to the people of our state. That is critically important as we go forward. Louisiana ranks number 5 among the top states for doing business, according to Area Development Magazine. Number 4 among small business friendly states, according to thumbtack.com. And Louisiana actually got an A+ rating, one of only 4 states, because of the way we support small business. Unemployment today is at a 10-year low, 4.6%. And we actually see wage growth with people who are out there working hard every day. Last year, 24,000 more Louisianans gained employment over the year before. I see the progress. I see the momentum. And most importantly, when I interact with people all over the state, they tell me they are starting to feel it. Now look, I know it's not mission accomplished. We have some economic sectors in our state that have not yet fully recovered. We've got some geographic regions of our state that are not fully benefiting from this. And I guess in that sense, it's never mission accomplished. It's never where you've done all that you can do. But we are definitely on a much better and brighter road into the future today than we were. And we have to maintain the momentum. Now, there's some things we can do in the regular session that starts next month to do that. And I want to talk to you a little bit about what we intend. Regulatory relief, small business support. You know, Louisiana ranks in the top 10 according to the Institute for Justice in the highest number and worst burden of occupational licensing requirements. We're the only state in the nation, for example, that still license florists. Should we be doing that? Aren't there some other occupations that we ought to just allow them to open their businesses and compete? The market will sort out who knows how to arrange flowers and who doesn't. Sexual harassment. We're going to take steps to ensure workplaces are free from any form of harassment or discrimination. There's some things we can do to improve there. We're going to make sure that we get more transparency around pharmaceutical drug pricing. We're going to support military families and the creation of a Gold Star monument in Louisiana. Speaking of those licensing, one of the things that I hear over and over when I meet with the general officers from Fort Polk or from Barksdale Air Force Base is Louisiana makes it especially hard for spouses who move with their military spouses to then work when they get here. And so you have a lot of couples that out there choose not to live together while they're stationed in Louisiana because it's easier for them to continue to sell real estate or be a teacher or to be a nurse if they stay where they are. Well, let me tell you, we owe it to our military families to do better than that. And so we're gonna work to make sure that we do better. We're gonna work to continue to eradicate child hunger in Louisiana. You know, 1 in 4 Louisiana children live in poverty, and access to healthy meals directly affects their abilities to succeed. We know that. We actually have an initiative that we kicked off, and Donna was very instrumental in this. Through No Kid Hungry, 40,000 more students have gained access to nutritious meals at school because of that particular program. We're going to do more to protect elderly from abuse. And yes, I continue to believe that $7.25 is not an adequate wage in 2018. And I think we can do better by our people than that. And I believe that it is offensive and wrong to have the biggest pay gap in the country when it comes to what we pay women and what we pay men who are similarly qualified doing the same job. We need to do better on both of those fronts. But that's all coming up in the regular session, and there will be many other things. This is a 3-month general session. There is no bill filing limitation, Franklin, so you get to file 62 bills if you want to. And we're going to see everything under the sun. And so there will be plenty more than that happening, obviously. But I want to spend a little bit of time talking about what we have to do before we get there. We are in a special session. I will tell you, the next 12 hours or 24 hours are going to be critical as to whether we can succeed. We need to succeed. I want to explain a little bit about that cliff you saw on the screen a while ago. The cliff is $994 million. Let me tell you what that represents. That is the difference in general fund forecast right now for this current year and next year, the year that starts on July 1st. We lose $994 million. Not because revenue isn't coming in as forecasted. The economy is doing better, more people are working, more people are earning more money. We actually have revenue coming in above the initial forecast. Not because expenditures are coming in more than we anticipated. It is because when we came in 2 years ago to deal with the largest ever budget deficit in the history of our state that exceeded $2 billion, $1.38 billion of revenue that came from that, and a little bit of that actually came from 2015 as well, it falls off the books on June 30th. But I want you to compare those two numbers I just gave you. 1.38 billion falls off the books. I'm asking to keep 994 million going forward. That is $400 million less on those revenue items. I believe we can adequately fund our critical priorities at that level because we do have economic growth and we have a better forecast because we have achieved significant savings, principally through the Medicaid expansion. We can do that. And yes, because we have made significant cuts, strategic cuts, cut my mic off too. We've made significant cuts since I've been governor that well exceed $600 million. And so we're in a position that we can reset for less revenue, move forward, adequately fund our priorities, and by the way, at $994 million, there will still be some cuts. But they won't be nearly as draconian as what you're going to see if we don't fix the cliff. In fact, I will tell you, the cuts at by the way, $994 million is the difference in revenue. We believe that the federal reforms in and of themselves will end up making sure that we get $302 million next year because of the changes they made on individual income tax. So the cliff really isn't 994 anymore, it's 994 minus 302. That's really what we have to solve for. Eminently doable. But I will tell you, if we don't get it done, I don't believe the House will pass a budget, the legislature won't pass a budget. Franklin is the vice chairman of the Appropriations Committee. I'll let him share his opinion with you all if he wants. Maybe he can. I don't think so. The most basic responsibility we have every year is to pass a budget. I believe we won't get it done in the regular session. And so if we don't fix this now, we're going to go to the end of June, when we have about 3 weeks before the fiscal year starts, and we're going to have to fix the cliff, pass a budget, and pass a capital outlay bill. That is no way to govern. I can assure you, despite our best efforts, in 3 weeks we will make mistakes, because that's too much to do in 3 weeks. That's why we're in special session now, to get these problems fixed. And there is considerable overlap between what people think we need to do at the Capitol to fix the cliff. And 90% of them believe we ought to be in special session, we ought to get it done in February. But even at this late hour, we see people who are not really talking to one another, exchanging ideas, or believing that they're in good faith. And compromise is hard to achieve. But we are not giving up. I am not giving up. I'm going to continue to work to bring people together to compromise. I will tell you, I think it is wrong to maintain any part of the fifth penny of sales tax, because we have the highest sales tax in the nation. But I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to keep some part of it if it solves the problem. It's called a compromise. And so that's just one example, but there are multiple avenues for us to go into session and raise the $692 million. And when I say raise, it's really maintain, because we're going to let $400 million fall off the table. We can get this done, but we're going to have to come together and work in good faith to make it happen. Because if we don't do it, and I'm right, and we can't pass a budget, then we have the next several months people out there who may be a junior at LSU and they're on TOPS, and they're going to wonder, is TOPS going to be there for me in my senior year? You've got high school seniors making decisions about where they're going to go to college next year, wondering, is TOPS going to be there? But then we should fully fund TOPS. And we should not cut higher education again. We should maintain where we are with higher education. But it isn't just higher education and TOPS. Right now, we wouldn't be able to fund our partner hospitals, including the 2 partner hospitals that are running our medical schools, or the hospitals that are associated with our medical schools. And a whole host of other Medicaid services that are out there. We still have to house inmates. We have to take care of our foster children. The kind of cuts that you would have to make if we don't fix that cliff in state general fund dollars that I just described to you are horrendous. We need to get it fixed. I believe that we can, but we should do it in February, and we should not visit all of the uncertainty and the fear on the people of Louisiana over the next several months. So that's what's at stake. I'm going to continue to work hard. I'm going to ask for all of you to be involved. And I suspect, well, I think it's probably a certainty that there are people in this room who don't agree with some of what I said today. But I can tell you that the vast majority of people in here and I can agree on an awful lot. And that ought to be the basis of a good compromise, which by definition, you get some of the things you want in exchange for accepting some things you don't want. And so if you insist on what in your mind is perfect before you will vote for it, then what you're insisting upon is failure. That's what's happening in Washington, D.C., by the way. We need to do better than that for the people of Louisiana. The people of Louisiana deserve better than that. And so long as I am governor, we are going to work very, very hard to get these problems fixed. And we're going to get them fixed. You know, I said when I ran for governor that there are a number of reasons why I was running, but chief among them was that if kids in Louisiana decide for whatever reason that they want to leave our state to pursue a higher education, to get a good job or find a rewarding career, God bless them. We hope they come back, but God bless them. But if the kids of our state decide they have to leave Louisiana in order to get a good higher education, find a decent job, or have a rewarding career, then we have failed them. I refuse to fail because it isn't just the kids we are failing. We are failing the state itself, and we are jeopardizing all of this economic momentum, this growth, this investment, this job creation that we are seeing over the last 2 years. That's why the stakes are high. That's why it's very important. And so I would ask you to join your prayers to mine that we will come together and serve the people of Louisiana. Get these problems fixed. And do so in a way that keeps in mind the least among us. Because we can talk about what we prioritize. At the end of the day, if it's a priority, we fund it. And if we don't fund it, it isn't much of a priority. I want to thank you very much again for the opportunity to be here. I want you to share my optimism. I want you to share my resolve. And I want you to partner with me to get these problems fixed. And then watch the great things that continue to happen in the great state of Louisiana. God bless you. Thank you.
The governor does have a few minutes, and we've got a few minutes before 1 o'clock, so if you have some questions, please do not ask your question unless you are holding a microphone, because the rest of the room can't hear you, and it certainly won't be picked up by the recordings. So,
To the right.
I have a question, Governor Edwards. Besides prayer, what is the process that can help us to get you and the legislature and all the groups to work together besides prayer?
Well, first of all, I believe in the awesome power of prayer. But I also believe in what James wrote in the Bible, faith and works is better than just faith alone. So I would ask you to work. Work here means call your legislators. Call me. Let me or my administration know if you think there's something better that we can do than what we have proposed. But you should all insist that we get together, get in a room, lock the door, and don't come out until we got the damn thing fixed. That's what you ought to do. Yes, sir.
So the state of Maine just announced they have $1 billion surplus. B with $1 billion. Have you talked to Governor LaFarge to see what they're doing, or would you like his phone number?
His name is Governor LePage,
Hey.
and I actually had lunch with him at the White House a couple of weeks ago. I don't know about the surplus, and hopefully they do, because I'm envious. To be quite honest with you, we had a surplus in this state 10 years ago that well exceeded $1 billion, and what I inherited upon coming into office was a shortfall that exceeded $2 billion. And in the same 8 years, we drained $3 billion worth of trust funds because we swept them into the operating budget as non-recurring revenue, spent them as if it was recurring, and still cut higher education over those same 8 years more than any other state in the nation. So if Governor LePage has a better situation up there, God bless him. I'm happy for him. We're going to get to where we have a solid position here in Louisiana as well.
Governor, when you were
Beth.
yes, we asked you what was the most important infrastructure need of the state in terms of all the highways and bridges, and you said the bridge in Baton Rouge. So would you give us an update on how we're doing with that? And, I know there's an innovative approach to things, and I'm wondering how fast it's going.
Well, infrastructure is huge across the state. I will tell you, you don't need me to tell you we're not doing as much as we should. Many of you probably had to leave work much earlier than you wanted to just to get here for this lunch, and you're about to get back into that traffic. The infrastructure is a particular challenge. I will tell you that we are trying to be very innovative. We recently announced a plan where we're going to take advantage of Garvey bonds, where for 12 years we will bond 10% of the revenue we're going to get from the federal government, from the Federal Transportation Trust Fund, in order to do 3 major projects in Louisiana, one of which is to widen I-10 from the bridge to the split here in Baton Rouge, which is incredibly important. Now, that will not alleviate the need for a new bridge, but we can do that while we look for the $1.6 billion that it's going to cost to build a new bridge. But in addition to that project, we also intend to go to New Orleans and build a new interchange to service the $1 billion airport that is coming online next year. And we're going to go up to Barksdale Air Force Base on I-20 and build a new interchange. We have a 4-star nuclear command at Barksdale Air Force Base sitting right next to I-20, and there is no access to I-20. And so we're going to go build that with the first round of projects with these Garvey bonds. We'll be the 26th state in the nation to take advantage of Garvey bonds. We've never done it before here, but I will tell you, if you can't identify revenue streams that you can commit to big projects like this, you never deliver the projects. You just don't. I picked up the phone the other day. Jimmy, you might be surprised. I picked up the phone. I called 6 road contractors, and I asked them to go out and replace some bridges and build some roads for us for nothing. They all declined. So you've got to be able to have revenue streams that you can dedicate to these big projects, else you don't move forward. But that will not in and of itself get us the new bridge, which we desperately need. Now, the meeting that I was at with Governor LePage had to do with transportation infrastructure. He and I visited with the president that day, and Gary Cohn and his administration. We're talking about infrastructure, and this is really about how they plan to take $200 billion investment over 10 years and leverage about $1.5 to $1.7 trillion worth of infrastructure. There's a couple things that came out of that, if it ever comes to be, that would be very positive for us, one of which, the average time to issue a permit, they want to move that from 8 to 10 years, which it is presently, to about 2 years. That would be very helpful. Secondly, they envision taking about $50 billion of the 200 and making it available as rural grants, block grants for infrastructure. That would be very helpful to a state like Louisiana. But the biggest part of the package is they would take $100 billion of the 200 billion and try to leverage that into well over $1 billion worth of infrastructure. That means that you have to have non-federal match that would be about 80 cents on the dollar, and federal match being 20 cents on the dollar. That is the reverse of what we have today. And I'm afraid that if that's what they do, it will price states like Louisiana out of the market, because we don't have the high-density population centers and the volume of traffic where the private sector can step in and build the infrastructure and then make a profit, get a return on that investment. And so that's going to be very challenging for us. And of course, I read last night that it appears that the Senate, or the Congress, I should say, is not in a real hurry to move forward with that infrastructure initiative anyway. So we've got some time to figure it out. But we are going to have to do better. And look, I know you don't want to hear this. Nobody wants to hear it. Our gas tax is 30 years old. It was 16 cents a gallon today. It was 16 cents a gallon 30 years ago. And inflation has whittled the purchasing power down to 7.5 cents. Who can do today with 7.5 cents what you were doing with 16 cents 30 years ago?
So that brings up actually a question I was going to ask. If we make it to a regular session later this spring, there's been some talk about a measure that would lead to a constitutional amendment to allow regions to tax themselves to allow for these infrastructure projects, gas tax. So would you support that? I know Steve Carter is working on that. And then second, last question, do you see any hope for meaningful fiscal reform long-term in your, in your term, given the challenges of just balancing the budget?
Yeah, let me take those in reverse order. I do. And in fact, if you look at what the legislature is currently considering in terms of fixing the cliff, about half of the measures do constitute real reform. They are very consistent with the legislatively created task force that studied our fiscal situation, our tax structure, looked at best practices from other states, and made recommendations about some of the things we should do. And about half of what's currently on the table to be considered by the legislature and hopefully accepted by the legislature does constitute reform. The other half does not. And that other half being a continuation of some portion of the fifth penny. But it's good enough, in my estimation, that if that's the best we can do, it is well worth doing, and it's well worth doing now, because it delivers more fairness, more predictability, more stability to our tax structure, and it does so in a way that incorporates at least a healthy dose of reform. It's not all reform, but it is better, and it is achievable. The question is whether it's achievable now or whether we're going to get there in June. But I do believe we need to do it. We can do it. We will do it. It's a question of timing. With respect to the other question you asked about whether parishes could get together and form specific regions whereby they would go before the voters and ask for tax revenue that they would then spend to improve transportation infrastructure in their local areas, I would lean to supporting it. I have not seen the draft of any bills or constitutional amendments on that, but there's probably a way to get it done that makes it worthwhile. But I have a long track record, and it has served me well, of not agreeing to legislation before it has been written and presented to me to read. Now, Jimmy Fields stood up. Jimmy, you pressing it because it's right at 1 o'clock.
This is going to be off the subject of money, but it's an important question. The #1 recruit in football for next year be a senior at Amite High School. And I just want your commitment to do everything.
What Jimmy isn't telling you that last year the #1 recruit came out of Amite High School, and he went to Alabama and he caught the pass that won the game for him in the national championship. So he's telling me to do a hell of a lot better this year than I did last year. I'm gonna do what I can, Jiffy. Thank you.